Up next on the tech of a roller coaster. First, you hear the churning of a chain as the car is slowly pulled upward. Then, the pounding of your heart. You go higher and higher. You think, will this thing fall apart? Will I get flung out and become carnival kill 300 feet below? Amazing what humans will put themselves through for a cheap thrill. Want to get a rise out of someone? Take them to the top of a roller coaster and watch them plummet at mind-boggling speeds toward Earth. It's that drop that sets the pace for the entire roller coaster experience.
It was incredible. It was awesome.
And while people have a hard time putting words to it, there's no doubt roller coasters would not exist were it not for our peculiar desire to explore the hidden daredevil within.
I think everybody likes to test the edge, but not everyone can be a race car driver or a skydiver. On a roller coaster, you can enjoy these thrills and do it safely. And in fact, a great roller coaster ride is something, whether you like it or don't, you're going to remember it for the rest of your life.
That initial drop is the defining moment of a roller coaster ride. How steep is it and why? How fast are you moving and why? Just how much technology goes into making that drop happen? We'll look at the physics of that first fall and how science and technology partner to create new sensations for the remainder of the ride. We'll explore the various forces that the coaster exerts on its passengers. And we'll meet the people who make it happen, from concept to maintenance. Roller coasters have been thrilling us since the second half of the 19th century, when Pennsylvania coal miners charged townsfolk for a chance to hop in a coal cart and coast down the track. Today, coasters are big business.
It's been shown over and over again that a new coaster will pay for itself within 2 years in terms of increased attendance.
About 317 million people ride roller coasters every year. That's more than the entire U.S. population. There are around 1,500 roller coasters worldwide, and the number is growing. About 80% of them are made of wood. The competition is relentless. Engineers and theme parks are constantly laying claim to some new record.
It has the latest designed wheel assemblies for trains. It has a newest restraint system on this type of roller coaster.
It's all about one-upping the latest and the greatest.
Every amusement park likes the bragging rights to having the biggest, fastest, or wildest ride, at least for 1 year.
The engineers are always trying to outdo their last design.
We pioneered the upside-down thing back in the early 1970s with the first, the corkscrew coaster was one. We also pioneered the suspended coaster that hangs down below the rails, and of course, always the biggest ones in the world are ours.
Ron Toomer is a veteran in the coaster design business. In 1989, his crowning achievement was the Magnum XL 200, located at Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio. It was the first coaster to exceed a height of 200 feet. The first drop of this coaster reaches speeds of up to 71 miles per hour. And while it was a breakthrough design at the time, it relies on the same basic technology as the toy in Toomer's office. The train hooks onto a moving chain in the center of the track. The chain tows the car up the first and highest peak, and then releases it. It's all about rolling and coasting from there, hence the name roller coaster. Cedar Point Amusement Park has more roller coasters and more variety of coasters than any other park. Along with the traditional sit-down in the car type, you can dangle, you can stand, you can even take an old-school ride on what looks like a tower of toothpicks, a wooden roller coaster. This one is called the Mean Streak. It's made from over 1.7 million board feet of southern yellow pine. Enough wood to build about 130 average-sized houses. As wooden coasters go, it's huge. But at Cedar Point, it seems they're never satisfied with what they have. And in the year 2000, they claimed a new first with their 14th roller coaster, the Millennium Force. It reaches 310 feet high, the first coaster to exceed 300, making for a first drop of jaw-dropping dimensions. The train barrels down an 80-degree angle for 300 feet and reaches speeds of up to 93 miles per hour. The Millennium Force also boasts a technological first. The initial ascent is driven by an elevator cable lift system instead of a chain. It's still the same basic concept of a roller coaster, only much quieter. The train is still towed to the top and then released. At Cedar Point, they like to call the Millennium Force a giga coaster because of its enormous size. Its cost, $25 million, more than twice the cost of any other coaster out there. The design phase alone took 2 years, the construction 8 months. They poured enough concrete to lay 50 miles of city sidewalk. The track sections weighed up to 17,000 pounds. About 5.5 average-sized automobiles. And they laid about 1.25 miles of it. All that for 2 minutes and 20 seconds of thrills. Whether wooden or steel, whether sitting, standing, or hanging, all roller coasters have one thing in common: the drop. Up next on the tech of a roller coaster, the physics behind that first fall, and the forces that freak us out. The roller coaster's first hill is a time of anxious anticipation for some and utter fear for others. But for the physicist, it's simply a matter of gathering stored or potential energy. It takes a certain amount of energy, or effort, for the motors to pull the train up the hill. But the higher the train goes, the more potential energy it gathers. And in the roller coaster world, potential energy equals excitement. The more potential energy a coaster can gather climbing upward, the more screams the coaster can dish out on the way down. Alan Schilke is a structural engineer for roller coaster design company Aerodynamics.
It takes all sorts of people to design coaster, everywhere from PhDs to draftsmen to various engineers and designers. Electrical backgrounds, mechanical backgrounds, structural backgrounds. The whole unit of the engineering team has to come together in order to make a coaster work, be safe, and fit together.
I help Alan Schilke. He's the engineer. We work together. When a client comes to Aero and requests a ride, they want either a suspended coaster, a looping coaster, or a Magnum-style runaway train type coaster. And they come to us and provide us site plans.
We take the site plan and we start drawing. Maybe on a napkin, it may be on a piece of paper, just generally where we think the ride's going to go and what the ride's going to do.
Oh my gosh!
When a coaster crests the first peak, it begins to release all its stored energy, which is its secret to reaching certain speeds, climbing more hills, and making it through loops. As the train is released, the gravitational pull of the Earth causes acceleration. The steeper the angle of the drop, And the longer the drop, the higher the rate of acceleration. The train is now gathering what's called kinetic energy. The greater the mass of the object in motion, in this case the train, and the higher the speed of the object in motion, the greater the kinetic energy, or energy of motion, which is what's needed to propel the train in a new direction.
He gives me a speed that we have to enter the loop at, and then he'll design a loop that'll be adequate for that entry speed so that the forces will be right, at the top of the loop, and it'll make it all the way through the loop.
If the train doesn't gather enough kinetic energy, it won't make it through the loop or up the next hill. So these calculations are critical. Each of those directional changes serves the same purpose as the climb up the first hill. The train will gather kinetic energy as gravity pulls it down out of the loop or down the next hill.
You're visualizing the ride the whole time and putting things together kind of like a choreographer does.
Aerodynamics has developed a computer-aided design, or CAD, program. It converts various drops, loops, and inclines into 3D representations of what their concept would look like if it were built.
You can ride and view the whole thing from the outside and from the rider's seat. The original design of the programs was what took all the time. Now we can pump out different rides and get different feelings very fast.
The program not only offers a virtual ride, it gives the designers information about what the passengers will experience.
Now, once we have these points on the track, we can put them into what we call our speed program, which gives us the velocity of the coaster at every foot along the track, and the G-forces at every level. They give the G-forces into your seat, the lateral G-forces that are applied to your head, and the longitudinal G-forces as you're going like through a loop, for example.
When engineers design a roller coaster, they have to take care to temper thrills with safety. And when it's finally constructed, it must be put to a real-world test. That's when guys like the roller coaster doctor are called in.
We want to know what's happening to the riders out there. Is there anything on these rides that has the potential for hurting them?
Up next on the Tech of a Roller Coaster, we'll find out what the doc is measuring when he puts a coaster to the test. The changes in G-force a passenger experiences are critical to a coaster's design and part of what makes the ride worth waiting in line for up to 4 hours.
From the moment you drop off the lift hill until you return to the relative serenity of the loading platform, there should be no slow time, no moments to regain your composure.
Thrill seekers might not know this, but a roller coaster ride could serve as a training mission for a space shuttle mission.
As this magnum is coming out of the drop that is just in front of us here, at the bottom it's experiencing 3 to 4 G's of force. As we launch the space shuttle, we experience about 3 G's of force.
When pushing 3 G's, the body experiences the equivalent of 3 times the Earth's gravitational pull, as opposed to 1 G when standing on the ground. Designers need to pay very close attention to G-forces.
The main problem with G-forces is not that you're going to hurt somebody necessarily, but that you disorient people at high G's, especially for extended periods of time. People think they get dizzy because they're turning upside down so many times, when in reality it's the combination of being spun around at the same time as pushing a lot of G's.
The human body blacks out at about 6 G, so coaster designers try to keep the positive G-forces on you to something between 3 and 4.
When the body is pushing in excess of 6 G's, blood fails to pump normally, causing a pooling effect in the lower extremities, depriving the brain of blood and leading to tunnel vision or even blackout. Even lower G's, like those experienced during an abrupt change in direction, can cause mild pooling, leading to lightheadedness. But the coaster experience isn't just about heavy G's.
The other thing that I enjoy, and many coaster enthusiasts do, are moments of airtime when you're literally lifted up off your seat
This airtime on what coaster designers call floater hills happens when a roller coaster crests a hill. That action mimics the parabolic arcs that astronauts fly on board NASA's KC-135 to prepare for weightlessness. As the coaster races through the top of the arc, the only thing keeping passengers from getting flung out of their seats are the safety restraints. Passengers just pulled negative Gs. But in an extreme negative G environment, people have been known to see red due to the increased amount of blood rushing to the head. It's that same pooling effect, working in the opposite direction. Designers are always working very hard to make sure their calculations are sensational, but also safe. And to keep them honest, the roller coaster world has guys like Dr. Richard Brown.
We can use computers to predict what accelerations the occupant is going to feel when they ride this, quote, theoretically perfect ride in the computer. But obviously you don't ride it in the computer, you ride the steel that's actually delivered here and put up.
A neurophysicist by day, Brown got into roller coasters by accident, back when he was a university researcher involved in orthopedics.
Which is the medical specialty of the musculoskeletal system, the bones, the joints, the tendons, and ligaments. And when one of the parks had a problem, and they gave us a call and said they had a ride that was injuring people, and wanted to know whether we could help determine how they were being injured, because it was exactly the same injury on everybody. So the first time we tested is when the ride is put into operation. This unit is called an acceleration measuring device. And what we have here, we have 3 independent units. The bottom one will only measure the experience the rider feels in the up-down. You know how when you go through the dip in a roller coaster, you feel heavier in your seat? This will tell how much heavier. This one lets us know any side-to-side accelerations, where you're going to either be pushed left or right. And this one here lets us know what's happening in the front and back direction.
The roller coaster doc doesn't only take maiden voyages. He also pays much-needed mid-season house calls, because things can change.
As the bearings wear in and the wheels wear in and the track wears in and everything gets smoother and slicker, it goes faster.
G-forces not only wreak havoc on the passengers, they can affect the structure itself, especially the 5.5 acres of wooden skeleton that makes up the mean streak.
If you've had a lot of rain recently, the wood will swell up and get tight on you. You have to make sure that you don't break a lot of bolts by doing that when they swell up. So you have to check all your bolts. And when it gets hot and you don't have any rain for a while, the wood will shrink down. Things will get loose.
Besides the 6 carpenters who give it a daily 4-hour inspection, the mean streak gets a full once-over at the end of each season. Tracks are x-rayed. Cracked and worn parts are replaced.
They're great rides. They've been around since the turn of the century, you know. These are the first roller coasters, and they provide a thrill that's different than the steel ones.
And while the steel coasters don't require the kind of maintenance that the wooden ones do, they still need to be tried and tested. At Cedar Point, coasters are often pre-flighted in the mornings before being open to the public. Just another phase in the monumental effort to create that thrill. Up next on the tech of a roller coaster, the roller coaster's defining moment under a spotlight. Roller coasters have created thrills for millions of people, but the majority of those who board them year in and year out literally have no idea what it takes to make those hair-raising experiences possible. We've met the people who designed them. We've studied the physics of how they work, and we've seen the kinds of forces that a big coaster can put you through. Now, it's time for one last ride. Hearts are racing. There are giggles of anticipation. A motor powers the mechanism that tows the train upward. The train gathers more potential energy with every inch it climbs. At the top, the train is set free. and all the potential energy is released. Gravity causes the coaster to accelerate downward. Passengers are almost in free fall. The train's speed, along with its mass, gives it enough kinetic energy to barrel through the upcoming directional change, causing passengers to push between 3 and 4 Gs. They feel heavy in their seats. Kinetic energy sends the coaster up another hill, and passengers crest a peak. They're pulling negative Gs. On some coasters, the passengers are turned upside down, only to gather more kinetic energy coming out of the loop. The passengers experience the same thrills that pilots and astronauts feel, thanks to the potential energy gathered in that first climb. And while riders may feel like modern-day daredevils, careful engineering has made this heart-stopping ride totally safe. From the physics of a coaster to the forces at work, from the engineers to the enthusiasts, we now know what a coaster is really all about. An undefinable thrill defined.